Hi, it's Miss Melissa from the Oosterhout Library with a new book, Harbor Me, by award-winning author Jacqueline Woodson, published by Puffin Books. And this book is available on the Cloud Library app and on the shelves of the Oosterhout Library. It starts with a quotation from a classic, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. We'll leave now so that this moment will remain a perfect memory. Let it be our song, and think of me every time you hear it. Chapter 1. We think they took my pappy. It's over now, or maybe it isn't. Maybe even as I sit on my bed in the dying light of the late afternoon, it's beginning again. Maybe Miss Laverne is looking over the new class list, her finger moving down the row of names. Maybe her, she's thinking, and him and her. But it won't be the same. It won't ever be the six of us together again. We think they took my pappy. My uncle is a musician and a storyteller. He says the hardest part of telling a story is finding the beginning. I've pulled the voice recorder from my closet and have it sitting on the middle of my bed now. When I press play, Esteban's voice fills my room. It sounds scratchy and far away, but still, Esteban is here again, and all of us are sitting in our small circle in a place we called the art room. Nobody knows where he's at. Outside, a blue jay perches on the edge of a branch. Tree of heaven. Miss Laverne taught us that. It's the same tree the girl in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn sees from her fire escape. The thing about that tree was that it could grow anywhere and keep growing. And that was the metaphor, that even when things got really hard for everyone in that story, even when the dad died and the mom had to scrub more and more floors to make money, even when the kids didn't have anything to eat for days and the apartment was freezing, the tree kept growing. The main character, her name was Francie, she was like that tree. Miss Laverne said that all of us, Esteban, Tiago, Holly, Amari, Ashston, and even me, we're like that tree too. My uncle is moving out tomorrow. He's the only parent I've ever known. He says, this is a beginning. He says, now you'll have 2 houses to go to. He says, you're 12 now, Haley. You're ready. But I'm not. This afternoon, I miss everything. I miss my uncle even though he's packing upstairs. I miss the art room. I miss Holly and Amari arguing and Ashton pushing his hair away from his forehead. This afternoon I miss Tiago's dreams of the sea and Esteban's poems and all the stories we finally trusted each other enough to tell. I miss the beginning of our story together and the deep middle of it. Once there were 6 of us. Once we circled around each other and listened. Or maybe what matters most is that we were heard. Downstairs, my father's playing the piano. Soft, sad notes floating up from the living room. The piano is old, found on the street a few blocks away the day my father moved back home. My father, uncle, and 3 other men lifted it up the stairs, then had to remove the door to get inside. It isn't upright, scratched wood and yellowing keys. My father took the whole day tuning it, and now the notes move through the house, dipping down at the end like tears, rising up like prayer. Upstairs, I can hear my uncle moving from dresser to bed and back again, and I know he is neatly folding shirts and sweaters into a suitcase. Most of his stuff is already downstairs. Boxes line the hall by the front door. His favorite chair is draped with a blanket. His guitars are stacked in their cases beside it. Tomorrow he will move to Manhattan and start his new life. I'll be the bachelor I was always meant to be, he said. Then, seeing the look on my face I failed at hiding, he said, and I'll be back every single Sunday to spend time with my most favorite person in the world. I don't remember my life without my uncle in it. In 2 weeks, I'll begin 7th grade. My best friend, Holly, will be there. But there will be holes where Ashton, Amari, Tiago, and Esteban once were. We think they took my pappy. I play the first words of Esteban's story over and over as my father's song lifts up to my room, as my uncle packs above me, as the blue jay perches in the tree of heaven, as the world keeps on spinning. Chapter 2. That first week of September, the rain wouldn't stop. Rivers ran down along the curbs, and at the corner of our school, cars had stalled in the middle of the huge pools of rainwater. Even though it was still warm outside, our classroom felt damp and a little bit cold. Some of the kids were playing with those spinner things. One boy, whose name I forget, had his head down on his desk. I remember his dark curls, the way they fell over his arm. For some reason, those curls spiraling over his arm and down to the scratched-up desk made me sadder than anything. There were 8 of us. Our small class had come together because the school wanted to try something new. Could they put 8 kids together in a room with one teacher and make something amazing? 8 special kids. Even though they didn't say it, we knew there was something different about us. We all had been in the big classrooms before, and our learning felt like a race we were losing while the other kids sped ahead. We made believe we didn't care that we learned differently, but we knew we did. And the school knew we did. The school knew we got laughed and teased in the big yard, and that some days we faked stomach aches and sore throats to stay home. It was only September, so no one knew if this experiment would work. But our teacher, Miss Laverne, was tall and soft-spoken and patient. We loved her immediately, and the school itself had huge windows and brightly colored walls. My uncle said it was one of the best schools in the city. I'd been there with Holly since first grade, so I didn't really have any other schools to compare it with. But if nice teachers and rooms filled with lots of windows made something the best, I guess it was true. By the end of that week, the boy with the curls had moved away, and another girl's mom had come in and fussed that her daughter was smarter than those children, while Miss Laverne shushed her and guided her and her daughter gently out of the room. The girl looked like she wanted to sink into the floor and disappeared. We never saw her again, but sometimes I wonder what it had been like if she had gotten a chance to be part of the art room. She had gotten to hear what we heard, see what we saw. After she and the curly-haired boy left, only Miss Laverne and the 6 of us remained. An hour after class started on that Friday, Esteban came in, his head down, his hair slicked against his forehead, his Yankee cap dripping with rain. He walked straight to his seat without looking at the rest of us. I watched him sink into his seat so sadly and heavily, it felt like the whole room shivered. His jacket was way too big for him, the shoulders hanging down his arms, the sleeves falling over his hands. I didn't know Esteban yet. I didn't know anyone but Holly, really. But I wanted to go over and hug him hard. I didn't care how dripping wet he was. No one should ever have to look that sad. "Do you have a late pass for me, Esteban?" Miss Laverne asked. She was standing at the front of the room, her arms stretched out towards the smartboard. I don't remember what it was on. Maybe a globe? Our tiny group that year was a 5th/6th grade class. This, too, was a school experiment. "Is everything okay?" Miss Laverne's dark brown face was crisscrossed with worry. Esteban shook his head. "I don't have a pass," he said, his voice breaking. "We think they took my pappy. No one knows where he's at." He put his head down on his desk, his face turned towards the window. Miss Laverne went over to Esteban's desk and bent toward him, her hand on his back. They spoke softly to each other. Maybe they spoke for 5 minutes, maybe it was an hour, I don't remember. It was a long time ago. So much can change in an hour, a minute, a year. Chapter 3. While Miss Laverne talked to Esteban about his father that morning, I thought about mine. I thought about handcuffs. I thought about fathers being taken away. I thought about uncles coming to the rescue and mothers gone. The memory is mostly shadows now. My father's pale hands hanging from silver handcuffs, the cops pushing his head down into the police car, my uncle coming to me and lifting me up into his arms. I was 3 years old. When my uncle first came to live with me, I was afraid. It was this vague fear around the edges of myself. Miss Laverne knew why. As I watched Esteban that morning, I felt it. The fear coming around the corner, finding me, finding both of us. I stared over at him. I wanted to give Esteban the same sign, my pinky pointing towards him and my thumb pointed back towards me. I wanted to say, I know that thing, Esteban. I've looked out the window that same way. Miss Laverne turned from Esteban and told us to read quietly to ourselves. We opened our books from our bags, but I don't know if any of us read a single word. The whole world felt wide open suddenly, like it wanted to swallow us. I heard him tell Miss Laverne, I'm scared. I'm so scared. When the lunch bell rang, Esteban stayed behind. I wanted to touch his shoulder as I walked out and say, it won't always feel like the first day. It won't always feel this bad. But I didn't. I let the words hang in my throat until Holly grabbed my hand and pulled me down the hall with her. Behind us, I heard Amari say, E, what's going on? Talk to me, bro. Chapter 4. If there's one thing I do remember as clear as if it happened an hour ago, it's the afternoon Miss Laverne said to us, put down your pencils and come with me. It was the end of September and we'd been taking a spelling test. Esteban had been absent for days. When he finally returned, Miss Laverne asked him if he was up to doing some work, and he nodded. It helps me forget for a little while, he said. Forget what? Amari asked. Nobody knows where they took him, and now we're packing up everything, Esteban said. Because if they took him, maybe they're going to take us too. I turned back to my test. I didn't want to think about fathers. Mine had been in prison for 8 years by then. In the last letter we'd gotten, he said he wasn't sure what would happen with his parole. If he got it, he didn't know exactly when he'd be coming home. I remember zero about living with him. Every good thing that had happened with my uncle. I couldn't imagine a different life. Didn't want to imagine it. Not for me. Not for anyone. I was stuck on the word holiday. Did it have 2 L's or 1? My spelling had always been bad, but in Miss Laverne's class it didn't matter so much because we were all at different levels in one thing or another. The words you miss, just tell me what you don't yet know, Miss Laverne always said. It says nothing about who you are. For some reason it made me feel better. I was 11 years old. What 11-year-old didn't know how to spell holiday? In the book it's written as though she spelled it wrong. Put down your pencils and come with me, Miss Laverne said. The 6 of us stood up. Our school uniforms were white shirts and dark blue pants or skirts. We could wear any jackets, shoes, or tights we wanted. I had worn blue and white striped tights that day. Holly's tights had red stars on them. When we stood next to each other in the schoolyard that morning, our stars and stripes echoed the flag waving from the pole above us. We had spent the minutes before the bell dancing around it, while Holly sang that old song about having a hammer. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning. We stood next to our desks and waited for Miss Laverne to tell us what to do next. Amari pulled his hoodie over his head, then quickly pulled it off again, the way he sometimes did when he was nervous. Amari was beautiful. His skin was so dark you could almost see the color blue running beneath it. His eyes were dark too. Dark like there was smoke behind his pupils. Dark and serious and infinite. In that 5th/6th grade class, I didn't know how to say any of this. I wanted only to look at him and look at him. Take a picture, it lasts longer, Amar said to me in such a cranky way it almost brought me to tears. Ashton smirked and pushed his hair away from his forehead and held his hand there. She doesn't want a picture of you, Holly said. Bad enough we have to look at you 5 days a week. She left her desk and headed over to the classroom library. Holly, back to your desk, Miss Laverne said. I want you all to take your books. You won't be coming back here today. We all gathered our stuff and followed her into the hallway. Miss Laverne took out her phone and said, Smile, people! In the photo, Holly and I have our fingers linked together, our tights looking crazier than anything. Amari had his hood halfway on and halfway off, and Tiago, Esteban, and Ashston were all looking away from the camera. The picture is taped to my refrigerator now. We look so young in it, our cheeks puffing out with baby fat, our uniform shirts untucked, Tiago's sneakers untied. We walked down the hall behind Miss Laverne, her heels clicking softly. I thought about how maybe one day I'd grow up to wear black shoes with small heels as I clicked as I walked down the hall, and have students following behind me who were a little bit in love with me. 2 small kids came running down the hall, but when they saw Miss Laverne, they stopped and started walking slowly. I almost laughed. Esteban pulled his knapsack onto his shoulder and held it with both hands. You okay, bro? Amari put his hand on Esteban's arm. Nah, Esteban said. Not really. Amari moved his arm over Esteban's shoulder and kept it there. Chapter 5. When we got to room 502, Miss Laverne opened the door and held it for us. No one knew what to do, so we just stood there. The room was bright and smelled like the same oil soap my uncle used on floors. Back when me and Holly were in 3rd grade, it had been the art room. But when someone gave our school enough money to open up a whole art studio in the basement, now it was just a room we passed by sometimes and said to each other, Remember that used to be the art room? Welcome to room 501, Miss Laverne said. Holly ran in ahead and the rest of us followed and looked around. In the old art room, there were just a few of those chairs with swing-up desks in a circle, a teacher's desk with no chair, a big clock on the wall, and some little kid's ancient painting of a bright yellow sun thumbtacked to the closet door. Esteban asked, Are we getting transferred to a new class? He put his knapsack down between his knees and hugged himself. Amari had taken his arm off Esteban's shoulder but was still standing close to him. When Esteban shivered, Amari put his arm back. I heard him whisper, It's all good, bro. It's all good. Miss Laverne's not taking us somewhere we don't want to be. Miss Laverne sat on the edge of the teacher's desk and folded her arms. Every Friday from now to the end of the year, the 6 of you will leave my classroom at 2 p.m. and come to room 501. You'll sit in this circle and talk. When the bell rings at 3, you're free to go home. Why can't we talk in your regular classroom? Holly asked, hopping up onto the teacher's desk. I mean, your classroom. Our regular classroom wasn't regular. We knew that. But still. Down from there, Holly, please. Mrs. Laverne waited for Holly to jump off again before she continued. I don't want to hear what you have to say to each other. This is your time, your world, your room. Sounds like you're trying to get an early break from us, Holly said. Give yourself your own kind of half day. Miss Laverne laughed. One day, Holly, that brain will be very useful to you. Holly looked like she wasn't sure if her teacher was complimenting her. What I'm trying to do is give you the space to talk about the things kids talk about when there are no grown-ups around. Don't you all have a world you want to be in that doesn't have people who look like me in it? Nope, said Amari. Yeah, Ashton said, not really. We like being with you, I added, in the other room. You like what you know, Miss Laverne said. You like what's familiar. None of us said anything. She was right. What was wrong with liking familiar things? Nothing's wrong with that, Miss Laverne said, being a teacher/mind reader. But what's unfamiliar shouldn't be scary, and it shouldn't be avoided either. But I don't know what we're even supposed to talk about, Tiago said. Like schoolwork and stuff, and to who? Schoolwork, toys, TV shows, me, yourselves, anything you want to talk about. To each other. And it's to whom, Tiago? To whom? Tiago said to himself like he was practicing it. To whom? I think any other bunch of kids would have started happy dancing and acting crazy because there weren't going to be any grown-ups around. but we weren't like other kids. I heard Amari say, "That's stupid," so quietly I wondered if I was hearing things. Then he said, "We could be talking in class if we wanted to be talking. You trying to change the art room into an ARTT room, a room to talk." "That's tight," Ashton said. He and Amari pounded fists. "I like that." Miss Laverne clapped once and pointed at Amari. "You are brilliant." "I could have come up with that." Holly rolled her eyes. "I could have added an R and thrown an acronym out there." She said acronym loudly to make sure Miss Laverne heard. "Nice use of the word, Holly," Miss Laverne said. "Okay, so because the art room is now the ARTT room, no one gets in trouble for talking here. You get in trouble for taking out your phone. You get in trouble for being disrespectful." "How are you going to know if you're not in here with us?" Amari asked her. "I'll know." We all knew she was telling the truth. Teachers knew things. That just was all the way was to it. "Well, what if I don't have anything to say to anybody?" Amari asked. Miss Laverne laughed. "Since when do you not have anything to say, Amari?" She shook her head and waved her hand to include all of us. "Can't believe you all are so resistant. I'm giving you an hour to chat. You get in trouble for this every single day. How many times do I have to say no talking? Now I'm saying talk." Amari tried to hide his smile, but he wasn't doing a great job of it. "Okay, I'm vibing it. The old art room is the new ARTT room, y'all. And I bet you can draw in here, too, if you want," Ashton said to him. Miss Laverne nodded. "Draw, talk, and yes, Amari, the ARTT room is beyond clever." "Like I said, anybody could have thought of that," Holly said. "Yeah, but I see you didn't," Amari said. "And like I said," Miss Laverne told us, "in this room we won't be unkind." She started, "It doesn't matter, Amari." "I just want to get it straight," Ashton said. "So now school ends at 2 o'clock on Fridays?" He had pale white skin like my uncle and hair that always fell into his eyes. Even as he asked, he was holding it back with his hand. Holly once said to him, "Just cut it already," and his ears had turned bright red. My own hair had always been bright red, but lately it had started getting darker and kinkier. If Holly's mother didn't braid it for me, I just pulled it back into a sloppy ponytail that frizzed all around my face. "Geez, Ashton," Holly said. "That's not what she's saying. This is not so deep, people." "I just really don't understand why we're going into another room," Ashton said. "By ourselves." I think looking back on that day now, that's the line that will always stay with me. Another room by ourselves. How many other rooms by ourselves we've walked into since that day, even if they weren't real rooms, and we didn't know that's what we were doing. We'll return to Brooklyn for more in the art room in our next installment of Book Bites.